Hi, I'm Akhila. I worked as the associate costume designer on the film. I've been born and brought up in Bombay, but I'm originally from Kerala. I have done my fashion from NIFT Delhi, and post that, I've started working in the industry. How I landed up on this film is through Maxima Basu. She's actually the costume designer on the film with me. So I've been working with her for the last 2 years as an associate.
Hi, I'm Piyusha. I am the production designer. I am born and brought up in Bombay. I did my bachelor's in JJ School of Arts in Applied Art, and then I did my master's at FTII. Yashasvi and I, we are both production designers, and we are from the same batch in FTI. Yashasvi introduced me to Payal.
Hi, my name is Rutu. I was the director's assistant and the second unit director of the film. I currently live in Bombay, but I was born and brought up in Ahmedabad. I have done my undergraduation in MIT Institute of Design, which is a design school, but I studied film. I work with Chalk and Cheese. Zico, when I was initially starting work with them, had asked me, we are doing advertising, but would you like to do long format at some point? And I was like, yes. When we were working on developing the film and working on pre-production, one of our colleagues sent me the script. That was practically my first day. A week later, I met Payal and Riku.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I'm the associate producer on the film. I actually studied a bunch of things: psychology, English. I have a master's degree in social sciences from Tata Institute. Having a varied educational experience really helps being a better producer. I don't necessarily think that not having gone to film school is a disadvantage. I clearly remember going for the premiere of Night of Knowing Nothing. I think something that struck me about Payal is that she's just such a great hybrid filmmaker, working through the medium of fiction, but telling stories that are so rooted in reality and are so socially engaged. Watching A Night of Knowing Nothing was a big reason for me to work with Payal.
Hi, I'm Prabhati. I was the assistant cinematographer and camera operator. I was born and brought up in Palghar, finished my schooling there, and then I finished my graduation from St. Xavier's, Bombay. I did the BMM course, which is Bachelor's in Mass Media. Post that, I went to FTI and I studied cinematography. Ronabir was my batchmate in FTI. We studied together. And while we were in FTI, it would so happen that we would end up collaborating with each other on our projects. I remember I told him, whenever you all make your first feature, I want to be a part of it. Night of Knowing Nothing was more like a docufiction, so I couldn't really involve myself in the making of it or in the post as well. But when the fiction work began, I joined them.
I work closely with Payal and Rutu and Riku, of course, three of them. So the brief we had received was the plot. In short, it's about these two nurses who moved to Bombay uh, to work, and they're Malayali, and their life and their personal lives and the city life, everything put together is the film. Their vision and their idea of the film in their head was very clear, and what they wanted was very clear. So we all were striving towards what they wanted each day. So when we started off itself, we knew that it's very specific in terms of colors. The color palette was very important for the film. And over time, we obviously built on that, kept building.
The brief we received was basically the plot and the spaces like Bombay and Ratnagiri being the two major places in the film, and also the hospital that these three women work in. So most of the time, Payal, Riku, Yashasvi, and I, we used to sit down, and even before designing the physical space, we were more into the space surrounding these women and how these women are together and the emotional and social landscape around them.
I majorly worked with Payal and Riku. In terms of the brief, we had to arrive at a very like specific visual language of the film, which obviously like with costume, with art, with everything in terms of even camera. We started work, and I think the main thing what we were trying to do is like make sure that what we are showing is authentic. So there was a lot of research that went into like doing research about the characters, the sort of spaces that they would be in, the sort of even the costumes or like the little things which are in their house. We wanted to be as close as we can to making it real. So I think a lot of brief was about trying to do research on these things and coming close to um, reality.
Before I was on board, there were already a couple of key crew members like Rutu and Robin who had been working with Payal a couple of months, even before we started growing up. And I think a lot of the research and recce work that they had already done on locations um, was kind of the brief. But I would say for me and for every single person on the project, it really was the script. Like Payal, even then, was a really well-respected filmmaker, right? She had won the Golden Eye at Cannes. She's someone that people would want to work with. But I think whenever we crewed up and whenever we got people on board, it was always the script that they were amazed by. And I think like it's such a detailed script that itself became the basis of what captured all of us.
The closest association I had was Riku Ranabir. I joined in quite late. I used to be in touch with them when they were doing the casting and other things, but my actual involvement in the film started later. I was there the last test shoot. They had done one test shoot before that. So I worked very closely with our first AC. His name is Vipin. He is also from FTI and he had worked with Riku before. So he kind of knew the way Riku lights up and the way Riku shoots. So in a way, I was also just trying to shadow all of that uh, and then with Riku, we would discuss how he wanted the lighting to be, and we discussed the lighting plans. We mostly spoke about the kind of light that we wanted in terms of the contrast, the colors that we wanted.
Because our lead characters were nurses who are from Kerala and were working in a certain type of hospital. We spoke to a lot of nurses who, and like, we just asked them how their days are, what they do, where they go with their friends. It's just a lot of research in terms of just understanding who these people are. Even in terms of like costume and art, we would go to their house, see where they live, what sort of clothes they wear. We were not just talking to them about what they do and who they are. It was also about their lifestyle. We workshop with all the actors, and what we would generally do is that we would pick out the key scenes, like the ones which are the most difficult in terms of choreography and also just in terms of performance. Sometimes we would have like a variation. What we were doing is we were trying out different scenes and trying it in different ways during workshops. But the other thing that it also helped us was blocking. So what we used to do in workshops is also place them in a way that would work when we actually would go on set. So that would also help us with how the set could be. For example, the bedroom scene in our workshops, we tried to make the two characters sleep in like different ways so that, that can give us some idea as to how the bedroom could be designed. So obviously, while it helped the actors and Payal to direct them and come to major point of how it is going to be played out, it also helped a lot of other departments. Even in terms of costumes, you would like give them particular colors and just see how it would look like on camera, how two colors interact, how patterns are interacting. So the workshops were helpful for a lot of other things apart from just acting and just directing the actors.
I think the workshops helped us also quite a lot because we used to also watch them, what compositions look good. It was better for us to design the space around them.
I've been working on features for the last 6-7 years now. So yeah, every feature is different. The style here, it's more real. The spaces are more real. The characters are more real. Everything has to be the closest to reality. And that's the beauty of the film, actually. Uh, Even the way they've shown Bombay is not glamorized. No character is glamorized. It's all what the character demands and how the character demands. So we used to click pictures of people on the road and go show Payal. Do you think this kind of a person is this character closer to this, or does the boy wear this kind of clothes? Way she also had very clear ideas about her character in terms of an economical background, the way they would behave. Both of them actually, Riku and Payal, the way they would dress. They had very clear ideas in their head which they would convey to us. So yeah, it was very different in terms of how real it was.
In addition to being very detail oriented and the extreme amount of research that would go into creating this realistic emotional landscape and physical landscape, has an extremely keen eye for reality, but then she also has total command of the frame that's being constructed. So, for example, like the locations, there's an apartment where these two women live, and we searched for a long, long time before we arrived at the actual location where we shot. Because the way Payal had it in her head, it was very specific. The blueprint of the space and how the characters interact in that space was already thought out, right? So we actually at the end ended up creating that apartment because none of the existing spaces that we could find in Bombay really fit that mood or that description. So I remember she had a Wong Kar-wai reference in The Mood for Love in mind, in her mind for the apartment. It was very difficult to find exactly that layout. But it completely paid off. Like even though it took us that long to find that apartment, like you can see how that choice reflects on screen. So I just wanted to add that while she's also extremely detail oriented and borrowing a lot from reality, the kind of frames that she's able to construct is something that is completely from her imagination. So she blends the best of both of those two worlds.
My interpretation of the script when I first read it, for me, it was about love. I mean, sure, love and hope are also interdependent in a way. But for me, yes, it was about love in a relationship, love for your friends, love for the city. Not in a very romantic sort of a way, but because we never romanticize the city and the rains, I could feel a lot of love in the film. So that was my first takeaway when I first read the script. In terms of hope and light, I know Riku and Payal always wanted to keep it very real. So just the way we did not romanticize the rains or the city in a very conventional way, we also did not romanticize the light that we used, the actual light that I'm talking about. We made sure that the spaces were lit very realistically. There was no glorification of anything of any kind. The heroine is not backlit or whatever. It was all very real. I mean, it's okay if heroines are backlit, but I'm just saying that the light was used very softly. I think we can translate it to the fact that the characters that we see in the film, we look at them very kindly. So I think the way they were lit up was also very soft and kind. Like the images are not very sharp or the light is not very sharp. There's always this kind of softness and kindness to the whole imagery that we created. Although there was light and darkness, there were not always, but there weren't in many parts of the film absolute blacks, as we call them. There was always some detail in the shadows as well. And I think if I am to interpret it in my kind of way, I think it's also the way people are. We are not black or white. There's always a gray to us. Having said that, I don't think Riku was afraid to not light up the characters. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if the characters were in the dark, the essence of the shot and the characters and all of it was dealt very interestingly.
So because it's such a real space, the incidents, the partnership among those two characters, obviously much of it you might have experienced somewhere in your life. So like you said, this city is full of hope. So yeah, that does play a role while we design the film. Your life does play a role in such a film because it's very close to reality. So you interconnect them in some ways while you're working. And certain nuances you get into the film, certain nuances you take from the film and go.
I came from both places, Bombay and Ratnagiri as well. So I felt the most close to the reality of the script and eventually the film. Our focus always was to find the beauty and resilience in your everyday mundane things. For instance, Bombay in the monsoons cannot go without the blue tarpaulin, or your middle class houses cannot be separated from the pervasive use of plastic. So these were the very uneven, organic asymmetry in the design.
For me also, there was another connect because I'm a Malayali but born and brought up in Bombay. So the whole thing about them being Malayalis and working in Bombay, somewhere, because I have spent all my childhood vacations in Kerala every year twice. So there's that connect also for me while I was designing. There were small things like a tali chain or the earrings that they wear are very, very typically Malayali women of a middle class. The prints that you more see in Kerala than here. It's my perspective of the film. The women, the three central characters, Prabha, Anu, and Chaya ma'am, all three of them, their relationship was beautiful. It's a team that's built among strangers, because whenever we in everyday life we meet people, we work with people, and especially when there are women working together, it's just really beautiful how you become a team and you are there for each other. So it's a small beautiful thing that I took out from the film, how they've coped together and how they're there for each other even in all kinds of times in a new city. We didn't know each other.
I mean, I knew some of the other people, especially the ones who were from FTI. I knew them. I knew Robin. I knew Vipin, and Riku Payal, of course.
For me, everybody was new.
Piyusha, even though she is from FTI, I passed out way before her, so we never really got to interact with each other. We met for the first time on set only.
I have everyone's personal details in my Google Drive. I have everyone's Aadhaar card, everyone's contract. I know everyone.
Yeah,
but we usually had like long art and costume meetings.
Yeah, we had long art and costume meetings.
Everybody used to be there.
Yeah, we used to work closely. Piyusha, me, I think when you're putting together a film, everybody has to work together at some point.
One thing that was really fun, and I think all five of us had a great time with, is the intimacy scenes. So there are a couple of intimate scenes in the film, and the most fun part for us was that we were basically operating with an almost all female crew for those scenes. So we would actually design a closed set in such a way that it would just be a handful of people, and we were all doubling up as doing so, like Piyusha, for example, was also throwing light and helping with light. And then
Track and all she would do,
and I was producer and I was giving the clap. In that sense, I think that's where the female camaraderie really came out very well during.
Yeah, when we shoot off all the men.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was like a dream team scenario.
Dream place to be.
Yeah, work happened much faster and quicker.
Yeah,
That's true.
And more
That's
peaceful
true.
also.
Yeah, it was really nice
The
and fun.
coordination was like apt.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. No, don't quote us on this. The men in the film will hate us, like
Yeah.
all the crew.
Within each department, like we all had people who we were extremely close to. And Akhila and Shushti and Max,
Yeah.
extremely close. Tasvi and Piyusha, extremely close. Rutu and Suyash had a great bond, and Rutu was also really close to Payal, like a really close confidant.
Yes.
I had Zico and Astha, who are like my two best friends. Prabhati and Riku and Vipin also share a great bond. So, I mean, we do have friends on set, but I think all of us really
We made new friends on set.
Yeah.
I've been born and brought up in Bombay. I've done my schooling, my graduation, and then I did 2 years of fashion in Delhi. But more or less, my life has been Bombay. Over the years, you realize how sometimes it gets really hectic. But when you think of moving out of the space, I think you miss out on the hecticness after a certain point. I would love to move to a smaller city, but I think a month to into the city, I would want to come back to Bombay. I know it's really unsustainable and it's getting worse by day. Like rents are higher, traffic is worse. For a 20-minute duration, we take 2 hours. So all that's there, but some beauty in all of this also. You will reach where you're going to be happy. But yeah, somewhere down the line, there's a little part in me that wishes to slow down sometimes and go to a smaller city, and maybe come back, take a break, and come back. Uh, but I feel still it is the city of dreams, and for not only films, yes, but I think for most people, it's one of the city of dreams. We've chosen this. Every film is a high stress environment. So yeah, I mean, film industry, be it a film with a smaller budget, bigger budget, whatever kind of film, it is high stress because especially costume and art, because there are a lot of changes back and forth, last minute requirements, and it doesn't change for any film. This film was in very high stress. There were breaks in between. It's just coming home and sleeping is the best unwind that can happen on any film set while we're shooting.
I was on the film for almost a year. I think I was living, breathing, dreaming of all we imagine as light. I usually travel by bus or train. So we had this group and we used to always send pictures of things that we saw around or people that we saw and everything that reminds us, of the script and everything that relates us to it. High stress is always on a film, but I think I most enjoyed it on this because that's the only thing that was on my mind, and I had to take a while to get out of the color palette and just choose something even to wear. I used to always be in the color palette and it was unknowingly happening.
I think we were so much into the blues that we were all in blues.
Yeah, we have a joke that basically after the film we just started seeing like blues. We became kind of colorblind.
Yeah.
because the palette was such an important part of it. Rutu.
I agree with what Piyusha is saying. I was on the film for 2 years. So I think it wasn't stressful. It was a lot of fun. Like Piyusha mentioned at a point, we would like really just like whatever we see, because also like the language of the film was such that we were taking a lot from reality. If we go to a restaurant, if we go to a cafe, we like, oh, this tiled wall is looking really nice. Let's take a picture and see what comes off of it. Oh, this person is wearing a really nice shade of pink or blue. Let's take a photo and see where we can put it. So I think more than stress, it was just like a lot of fun in just taking ideas from everywhere and seeing how can we incorporate this in the film. Stress is obviously a part of this industry, but comparatively this was a very like non-stress environment, at least for me.
For me also, but yeah, films are stressful, Rutu.
And I mean, a lot of time it also has to do with the team and the people that you're working with. You work on projects where everybody is just like stressed and it just kind of translates, which was not the case here because everybody was really in sync and relaxed. Everybody would solve a problem together. It wasn't like, okay, this is your department, I'm not gonna. It wasn't like that.
Honestly, I used to say this a lot, like to myself most of the time, but I used to say that, this film will show Bombay truly is from a person who lives here and not the romantic idea. Even though we talk about dreams and hope, I think it's quite new the way we see Bombay, and I cannot really think of a film that shows that, because like I think I've grown up watching films of Amol Palekar and the Bombay in it. Even though it's a lot of fun, it's all this idea of being this romantic city. But here, I think it's quite distinct.
We also went to great lengths to find locations that haven't been exposed before in films. Like a lot of the locations that we've shot in are not coming from a location bank. We spent a lot of time making sure that where these women live, it should feel very realistic. So Bombay, normally it's either over romanticized or it's shown in a very gritty way. There are both these sort of ways of representing Bombay. But I would say it was very intentional.
Yes.
That we break the mold, and it reflects in every choice. And that's a very intentional choice that we made in every department to not keep showing recycle.
Even though we say that, oh, Bombay is a character, I don't think it's overwhelming in any kind of way. The story, the characters take the center stage in the film.
Yes.
And sometimes it so happens that some films that we'll watch, the landscapes or the spaces, they are the ones that will dictate the imagery. But I feel that it was not the case with our film, because the spaces were also so carefully chosen. Like the apartment that we ended up creating, I think it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
beautiful space.
it's just like Nikki said, it looked like an actual apartment, even though we shot in an abandoned building. Spaces were so carefully crafted, whether they were live locations constructed. It was a wonderful team effort under the captainship of Payal and Riku.
Maybe Piyusha can talk about
Also, yeah.
Like Ratnagiri a bit more because she's from there.
The emotional capacity of both the spaces is quite different. The color palette reflects that as well, and that has always been the center idea of designing the whole film. From the hustle and bustle of the city to the calmest place, like it's the calmest beaches.
Payal had it very clear when we shift from Bombay to Ratnagiri, how beautifully she's incorporated it in the costume or in the art, is the colors, the way they dress, everything kind of relaxes down when you go towards Ratnagiri. I think I've not seen the film, but yeah, while shooting it, I feel it really shows that shift really beautifully. And it's not very crisp and cut, too different, but it beautifully flows into the thing.
Even though Bombay has the sea, you never really in your daily life engage with it, and the ocean really hits you when you're in the second half of the film.
The shift comes at a point which is also very important for all the characters. So it's not just a shift in the space, it's also a shift in their mental state. It juxtaposes their mental space with their physical space.
I think also when they're in the city, they barely get any time to themselves. They commute basically from the north into central and south Bombay to work, and they spend most of their time in trains or and just trying to find little pockets of space. But I think when the film goes into the second half, they finally have time to themselves and with each other. And that's also a big shift we see. How women, um, when they are together, um, versus when they are in their identities as nurses, like when they're working.
Just to talk about the gaze, it's just when a woman has written a script, there are like very small nuances that you will pick. For example, like how we were talking about right now about how the film is different from first half to the second half. It's like second half the women are far more relaxed. It's not because it's a short span of time where they are just relaxing and are at, but it's just how they dress or how they are sitting or how they are chatting. It's a body language which is such a small thing, but it translates very largely when you see it on screen. So I think smaller things like this is where the gaze comes in my opinion.
Yeah, I think showing a friendship among these three women uh, has beautifully come into being because of a woman writing it, because the smaller details, how you would interact about a issue among two women and what would the thoughts be. I think it makes a very big impact when it's a woman writer or a director. I feel that shows the little details better.
I think a big one is showing female desire. I think the film, the layered way it talks about female desire is very distinctly written by a woman, and I think that's one area where um, more often than not men get it quite wrong.
Right.
Men don't get it right in
Right.
our industry. Even when I was reading the script, the way it deals with desire, it's so nuanced.
The beauty of showing strong women also, how each character is a very strong character by themselves, I think comes out when it's written by a woman. I feel it's better shown. So
Correct. Like,
that's beautifully shown here.
to add to that, it's not always strong women. You have to
Yeah,
have a
like
certain way to show strength.
and that's how it's shown. There's nothing so upfront and direct or something
Women written by women are more relatable.
relatable. Yeah.
So for me, this question will probably be a little more technical and tangible when we are shooting. And for me, when I was operating camera, there's an obvious male gaze and female gaze that we talk about in terms of the actual shooting bit of it. So I think I have never been aware of it. Maybe it reflects in my work or when I'm shooting, or if you are to compare a male DOP versus a female DOP shooting, a woman for that matter. But a major part of it also comes from the writing. And of course, Payal, because was so um, Payal was Payal, and like the way she wrote it. So when I would say shoot Prabha in a certain way, Riku would have his way of shooting Prabha as well. And even though now Riku's will be an obvious male gaze because he is a man, but I still think that because Payal's writing was so grounded and it was so soft and it was so feminine, consciously or subconsciously, I'm sure even Riku ended up, if I can say it, breaking the male gaze. Basically, what I'm getting at is a lot of it. For me, also, when I was operating camera, the script itself led to the way I would shoot the women. And it was absolutely a delight. It's just the way the camera would caress the characters. There was a lot of softness to it. There was a lot of kindness to the visual language as well.
I just want to add that Riku and Payal worked on the film together for many years. He is her creative partner, so I'm sure a lot of that comes from both of them. They were able to handle it very sensitively together.
Yeah. Although I'm not just talking about the intimate scenes for that matter. I was just in general the male gaze and female gaze that we talk about, especially when it comes to cinematography.
I don't know how much we can talk about the story. But yeah, it does say a lot about self-love and how they influence each other to have self-love. Like how the characters help each other to realize there should be self-love as well.
For me, the film also explores a little bit about how women are expected to sometimes give more than like receive.
There is self-doubt, which eventually translates into self-love. And it is very beautifully inscripted in the script as well from the beginning. I would really want to show the film to all women in my life, like including my family or my mother. Like Rutu said, it also explores this idea that women are always giving.
Don't want to talk about self-love in the way that we've come to understand it. Face masks, drinking your abilities and stuff like that. But I think the film does talk about agency, desire, how the society around us is constantly trying to mold and shape how we experience our own desire, and trying to police us constantly, police our bodies, police who we love. And I think the film does talk about agency, and does talk about self-love in that sense, making those choices for ourselves, and not being governed by the pressures of the society around us.
A lot of the challenges were more getting so close to reality, and getting to what Payal really thinks or Riku really thinks of. So I used to at least try my best to get closest to that. And like she always called her, we used to say it has to be something quite different, SQD. So we always strived towards getting there. The part was really interesting.
Challenges were different for, I feel like, every department that I was involved with in whatever capacity. Like Akhila mentioned, costume. So we had a certain grade in mind. So we did create a lot to sort of work with while we are shooting. So we sort of knew that whatever we are seeing as a color will drastically change when we put that grade into our film. So it was difficult in that sense to find colors of every little element of art or piece of fabric.
Yeah.
The right shade of blue for the uniform.
Yeah. Right shade of blue. We've done some 100 shades of blue. We used to come with a variety of blue and then shot down into like 10. Not only blue, purples,
Lavender.
Add a little more of black. We literally used to make the color.
Yeah.
So,
For Yashasvi and me, I think a distinct challenge was that we had our diplomas to do as well during the prep of the film. So we were on to our last year in FTII, and we had to each go different times to the institute to complete our film, as well as manage what is going on here as well. So that was tough.
Biggest challenge was when on the second schedule, Payal asked me to do continuity for the film, and I had basically zero exposure to continuity, but it just Payal made me believe that it was something I could do. She's like, you're a very responsible person. I'm sure you'll be able to handle this. That's all she said. And then I ended up being the continuity supervisor.
He came on the other side of things.
For the second schedule, and so moving from production, the direction team where they're so detail oriented, it was very, very challenging. But again, the kind of challenge that when you come out of it, you gain a completely new appreciation for film. Even though I kind of pushed myself and I didn't have that skill set before, knowing how to do continuity or knowing how to produce like an intimacy scene, which is again something that was very new for me, it's led to me being a better, more well-rounded producer. That's also my lesson from the film. Go for it, do hard things. There are people around you to support you. So even when I was doing continuity, it's not like everything was up to me. Like I had Rutu, I had Robin, I had Suyash, I had my other team members constantly looking out for me. You can do hard things if you have, that support around you and people who believe that you can do it. And indeed, that's how films are made. We have these really like ambitious visions, and it's just because the people around you are saying, yeah, like this is possible, we can find that shade of blue, yeah, of course we can shoot like an entire schedule in the Bombay monsoon. So it's that belief in the unattainable that make it possible and make it worth it.
Logistically, of course, having to shoot in monsoons. Um, in Bombay, it was much more controlled than it was in Ratnagiri for us. But of course, the rains were very difficult for us to navigate through. With Ratnagiri, we were also molding a lot of natural light. And for me personally, I think having to operate camera for a film which I'm not a DOP on was, of course, it was my first time also. It's almost like you have to get into the mind of these other two people, discussed about how we were framing for characters and not the spaces, and the very tangible aspects of the composition. But after a point, there are also shots which they were not bound by those parameters. So the few shots where I had to just instinctively shoot, I would constantly keep thinking like, oh, is it okay? Is this right? It was quite challenging.
Of course, it is an independently produced film, in the sense that it took many years for the French producers to make it possible for us to make this film. And also the French government has several funds that support filmmakers and producers and make this kind of work possible. At the same time, I just want to add that even though the film has been to Cannes, comes along with this tag of Payal, like art house oriented director, I do think it will find a lot of connect with folks who don't necessarily consider themselves to be lovers of independent cinema. Our hope is that when we release in cinemas, we'll see people from different walks of life. We do think the film will resonate beyond just the crowd that does go for festivals. And we definitely hope the film will get seen by as many people as possible. And we do think that it has that sort of a reach and that sort of universality as well, where a woman who is middle-aged in France would resonate with the lives of the main characters, Prabha and Anu, as much as an Indian woman who lives in Bombay. Yeah, the film is artistic, but it is also very universal in its emotionality.
We talk about mass films, and a lot of them have this criteria, but there are always these certain films that are so relatable that they reach the audiences by themselves. And I think All We Imagine as Light, as Nikita said, has that appeal. One thing as a filmmaker I'd like to live by is not take your audiences for granted, or not having this idea of knowing the audience always.
This film, for example, is something that it will attract audiences, but I just feel that we need more people to back films like these.
Right.
Like, because indie films don't get that kind of support. Because the first question that you'll be asked is, "Acha, who's the actor?
The
What's
star.
the selling point?" Because the goal is to recover money for the producer. It's very transactional, where there is a very obvious selling and buying of things that happen. There are so many beautiful films that are still not getting made because there is no funding available.
Also,
And
OTT is helping.
Start investing in stories.
Yeah, start investing in stories more than stars.
I would also want us as an audience to evolve and not have this notion in mind that if it's an indie film or if it's an artsy film, it's not going to be relatable.
Or we won't understand it.
Yeah, and I feel that like I think the audiences these days are also ready to accept.
Like Rutu clearly said, that the notion has been started to break that this kind of films are something that I'd probably want to relate to, but not this kind of films. I think that's kind of breaking thanks to all the OTT films that we have. It's very interesting. All We Imagine as Light is also pan-India because there's a little bit of Marathi, Malayalam, and there's Hindi. So I've been part of films that are pan-India, and it's more of basically getting a star from down south, from Bombay, and it is profit-driven. Uh, but how beautifully she has not made it that way, um, and how beautifully she's incorporated Malayalam, not knowing the language at all. She would make so much of an effort in knowing the language. I remember in between shoots, I used to hear her speak in Malayalam to break that barrier. She used to learn lines and come and tell us in Malayalam. So I think that's very interesting how this film has shown how you can make a pan-India film and include other regional films as well, and still work towards the art and the passion and not the profit side of it. It's more art driven.
Most of us don't speak Malayalam, but we had a few key crew members who knew the script thoroughly. And even though we didn't speak the language, initially I thought it would be a challenge, but I think the amount of prep that went into each scene, everyone knew exactly what was going on. Payal immersed herself in these transitions and in these workshops and rehearsals with the actors. Robin was a huge support,
Yeah.
Payal, and also to the rest of us.
Yeah, sometimes the dialogues would be the cue for me to move camera from point A to point B. And even though I wouldn't understand it, I still understood it in a way. And yeah, again, Robin is who I would go to, and I would ask, Acha, what is she saying in this bit?
The three producers that I worked with, Zico, Julian, and Toma, um, they were a huge support for me. They changed my entire view of what producing is. I think I have stopped looking at it as a very um, logistically driven thing, and I've begun to realize that being a producer is an extremely creative job. The way I saw them supporting Payal to achieve her vision, and the way that they made certain decisions um, to make sure that the production value of the film is of that level that we won at Cannes. Like I think it was masterful, like seeing the three of them work and completely change my approach towards producing um, as something that's very mechanical um, to something that's like it's its own craft entirely.
I have learned just so much from Payal and Kuku. For example, Payal is very, very technically sound when it comes to camera. And as a director, it's not always necessary that you see directors being extremely thorough with it. But I thought that that was very important, and how it helps when you are doing everything, when you are designing the language of the film, or even when you are shooting. I've learned so much from her process, Riku's process. But just in terms of advice, find a mentor who would like genuinely put so much trust in you and want you to learn from them. Payal and Riku were actual true mentors who put immense amount of trust in me. I would just say that maybe find people who you would want to learn from.
For me also, I'm echoing Rutu's sentiments here. But again, like when I came on board for this film, I was supposed to be the second assistant cinematographer. We had discussed camera operation, but not full-fledged. Riku just had told me, we'll see how it goes. And then the first shot that I operated for, I hadn't expected to take that particular shot because I think it was a very important shot, and I was like, "Are you serious? You want me to take this shot?" And Nikupal were like, "Yeah, yeah, just go for it." They were so trusting, and they just let me be myself.
She did such a good job, and she operated quite a bit in the second schedule. Yeah, a lot of those shots that have found their way to the film.
Yeah, thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to give a shout out to Chalk and Cheese and Zico.
Yeah, man, like
yeah. Especially like it in the whole process for both Yashasvi and me. It was our first feature film together, and it became quite overwhelming at points. But
they were very supportive,
and would really talk to them and also get some good advice on how to go about things. Payal and Riku as well. Having so much say in the whole process of the film. I would say there's this very general idea of production designers and art directors that we're associated with spaces and things and props.
It was a very collaborative process. Then usually you're only heading one department and you only talk about that. It wasn't like that.
Usually with art and costume meetings, I think people would maybe, in general take offend with if we have views about a certain costume, but we were like so
we were so we were out and open.
Whether we like it or we do not like it, everybody
yeah, that's true.
For example, Suyash, who was also the DA on the film, we would sometimes talk about lighting. Like I remember we were prepping for the smoke shot. I don't know if we can talk about it, but then we were also like brainstorming. Acha, ye kaise kar sakte hai? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it was just a lot of fun, basically. And then, of course, the intimate scene that we spoke about. Everyone was doing everything. And then, for example, I never thought that I would be able to do focus. I had to pull focus for one of the shots. So, like, Piyusha doing the track trolley and
also in charge of the rain machine.
What? Somebody was doing, who was doing the rain machine? Somebody was doing the rain. Yeah, it was just...
In Ratnagiri, I was doing it.
Yeah, you realize that you can do so many other things than you would give yourself the credit for.
I think that's the beauty of these kind of films.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember while we used to work on the student films also, everybody does everything. There's no boundary.
Yeah, and this was also by choice. It's not like we were.
Yeah, it's by choice. Exactly. It's just a beautiful process working towards the art that you're bringing
Yeah.
out. So anything for that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Payal also operated during one scene. I remember in Ratnagiri.
Yeah.
Saw her, took the camera from Riku and she was operating.
You operated
Like,
Yeah.
regardless of the
Multiple
size and the structure of
multiple
the set,
times. Yeah.
like that feeling of people who really want to just come together and make
Yeah.
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah, that feeling.
Alama.
Though it's a bigger set with a bigger, larger crew. Yeah, correct.
Piyusha even turned choreographer on one of the shoot days.
Me and Shrishti.
I mean, Nikki doing continuity for the whole of Ratnagiri sketch. It was just
Yeah.
amazing.
Even with Ratnagiri, technically saying we didn't have a lot of art to do, but I was always excited to go on set because there was everything to do. I mean, you could do whatever you want. I mean, doing the boom for the intimate scene, I think I had the most fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was the set for those, which I thought I could never do. I can never be a first AD, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. It was really nice.
Coincidentally, when the nomination was announced, me and Maxima, we were working together on a set. And we were so excited. We were shouting, we have to go, we have to go, we have to go. Before anything, the actor, Kani had called me, and that's how I got to know actually. Down somewhere, I knew that it would go to these heights. So it wasn't a surprise.
I actually started getting messages from the FTI circle, congratulations, which is when I discovered we're nominated. We all knew that it's going to go. I mean, it's Payal, but the main category was a sweet, sweet, sweet surprise. That was like iconic.
Yeah, same. Payal had sort of told us before that we've got into a certain category, but then the day that it was announced and we found out that we are in the main competition, that was a huge surprise. That was something that I couldn't believe it. I found out via Twitter when they were announcing the films. And I was like, wait, oh, it says main competition. Oh shit, that's mad.
Our aspiration was always for the film to go to Cannes from the very beginning of the project. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a major surprise. I mean, of course, there was a lot of joy in the moment. And the more and more films I watched over the, I mean, I think the more and more real it became the possibility of us winning something. But yeah, it was quite surreal to be there with so many of our crew. And the night before that we found out there was a prize, we were obviously partying. So the next morning, when the call came, we were running on very, very little sleep. The festival makes you feel like you deserve to be there. Like at no point did it feel like we don't deserve to be there. We felt really well looked after. Huge shout out to the festival team. It just created this environment for the makers of the film to be celebrated as much as the actors and the main cast. Cannes of all the film festivals really respects crews and makers. Of course, there's a whole other part of like Cannes, which is more around influencers and what they're wearing. But I don't think those two crossed over too much. And people were very respectful. Like when we were walking around, people would come up very respectfully to Payal. You know, as cinema lovers, everyone who was there, you know, really came for the love of filmmaking. I think I've never been to any. So if any of you want to add.
No, on the contrary, I'd like to say that things if we could do better at representing our filmmakers and not this other part that is used to commercialize the whole festival.
Very true.
I would say validation came from the process more than the win. Personally, for me, I feel validated throughout, you know, that okay, you can do it in a sense.
Like the fact that we could like pull this off was also validation, and of course the win. But yeah.
with the win, the most validation I would say is that now people around me understand what I do. Like, because everybody knows about this film, now they ask me what production design is, and second, they want to know now what it is about and what the process of the film and all of that. So yeah, if you say validated amongst your relatives, then that's the most validation I think I've got.